Welcome to Commercial Real Estate Uncovered. I am Erik Sexton, which is actually God in Germans, the billion-dollar broker. Welcome to another episode of Commercial Real Estate Uncovered. I'm Erik Sexton, and I am super excited to have our guest today. We have Las Vegas City Councilwoman Victoria Seaman, who is also running for mayor of Las Vegas, which is very exciting. I'm really excited to hear how that is going. And also, you were a state assembly person, how you started your political career, but you have a very interesting perspective as far as coming from the private sector and jumping into politics. So a couple things I would love to cover today is kind of your background and transition into politics, your vision for Las Vegas, how you wanted to get into politics, and just some success stories. Yeah, thank you for coming on. I've been looking forward to this ever since you agreed to come on. So just diving right into this, why did you originally want to get into politics from the private sector?
Well, I wanted to get into politics in the way of helping others who were running for office. I never dreamed that I would be an elected official because it wasn't a career for me. My career was prior, and it was as a businesswoman. But being a businesswoman is what led me into politics because I felt there wasn't enough representation for small businesses. A lot of times people have their single issue problem, and that was mine. It was like I left California because of policies and regulations and taxing. And when I came to Nevada, I brought a business, and for 5 years, I felt like it was starting to happen here. And so that was kind of my segue into politics, was because I was going to help fiscal conservatives get elected.
What was the business that you brought from California to Las Vegas?
I had a bath and body line called Bubalina.
Okay.
And I was in the spa business in California. So my goal was to leave the service business and get into more retail where I could sell nationwide and worldwide. Okay. So I created a product line of bath and body products. And I brought it here to Nevada. And for 5 years, I always tell people that I only knew the neighbor in my warehouse and offices and the neighbor next to me at home, because my husband and I were traveling all over the country at trade shows introducing our product line. And we did pretty good. And after 5 years, I started to see that things were happening to small businesses. There was this rhetoric from the government that said, you didn't build that. And, you know, I didn't feel that they understood how small businesses thrived and grew.
Well, that's a great perspective coming from the private sector, because as you and I have discussed in past conversations, people don't really realize how much local politics, I use the word local, affect your life. I mean, your schools, how taxes work, and we're going to get into all this. And people like to concentrate on the big presidential election, the drama behind Joe Biden and President Trump. But we're gonna table that conversation for another time. So your background was in the beauty line, and you had the spas, or I'm sorry, the product for spas. So at what point did you decide to run for state assembly? What year was that, and what was like a turning point?
So that was close to 2012.
Okay.
I mean, so I sold my business in 2009.
Okay.
And it was shortly after that I started volunteering in politics. So from 2010 to probably 2012, I was thinking, I was helping other electeds. But by this time, people were talking to me. I kind of got recruited to think about it. And the more I thought about it, I said, why not? I mean, I understand how business is done. And at that point, I was still thinking about taxing and regulations. I didn't really know about all the other issues until I was elected and went to Carson City. And then I really had my eyes open that government really did not understand the unintended consequences of certain legislations.
That's absolutely right. That's a topic that I get a little riled up about sometimes. But when you ran for office, like, tell me about how you how that process started. Like, people who have never been through it, and that's actually how I met you, was when I was running for office. So I have a little bit of a experience of getting kicked in the teeth. It's not a fun process. The first step when you decided to run for assembly, once you decided to run for what district, walk me through a little bit of the process of starting, maybe running for money or campaigning, or raising money or campaigning.
So it's really hard in the beginning, and I'll tell you why. It's hard because first, I always recommend that people get involved and help another candidate before they ever run. And that is really simply because I'd spent like a couple years around the political process before I decided to run. And I think that was invaluable to me because I needed to make sure that I understood the process. A lot of people say, oh, I'm going to run for office, and they don't understand it takes money. And I know people say, well, it shouldn't, but it does, because you have to get your message out. And because I was a businesswoman and I didn't know a lot of people that could support me, even though I was involved in politics somewhat, I had to be creative in the beginning. I had to do silent auctions. I had to go to my, former business colleagues, and I was able to raise money because I had those contacts through business. But for those people who are running for the first time, spend a couple of years helping candidates, I should say. Get involved, know the process. Too many people, good people, run for office without doing that, and they fail, and those are the people we may need in office. Like yourself, you would have been an amazing elected official because of your background. But we need people to understand that it's not easy. Like you said, you got kicked in the teeth because you don't understand the process, or you understood it to a certain degree. And
a certain degree is
yeah,
right.
but people put politics over people.
Yeah.
And that was the problem. We need really good people. And then a lot of times when that happens, good people don't come back and run again, and we need them.
That's absolutely right. And that's one of the things that I was really excited to bring you here to talk about is, I'm repeating myself from earlier, but how much the local politics really affect you.
Yes.
And most people can't even name their local assembly person.
No.
And if you're new to Nevada politics, and please correct me if I'm wrong on this, we have 42 state assembly people, which is kind of like the House of Representatives of the state. Then we have 21 state senators, and then the governor. So that's kind of like on the federal level, your House of Representatives, your Senate, and then the president. It's kind of governor, assembly, state senators. And those people, are they are in charge of your taxes, how some school funding goes. I mean, they're really day in, day out things that affect your life. And I'm always surprised how many people aren't involved in that. So tell me about your you obviously won. You went, you became a state assembly person. What was it like when you got up there as your first session?
I can tell you that of all the years that I've done business, of all the sleepless nights of worrying about how you're going to pay your rent when you first start, was nothing compared to the 4 months I spent in Carson City. It was extremely, a lot. It is nothing what like you envision. So when I got elected, I thought, because my party got majority, our governor was, of the same party, I thought we're going to get some great legislation passed. We had just gone through a ballot initiative for the margins tax, if you remember that.
Commerce tax.
Well, it's now the commerce
Okay.
tax, but it was called the margins tax, and the people defeated it. We did not want it. And so the governor turned around when he got elected, and he made it a priority to get it passed and just renamed it the commerce tax. So I started to see from the very beginning when I got elected that things were going to be tough, and that it was kind of a go along, get along. If you don't go along and get along, then it doesn't matter whose party's in charge. They're going to make sure they try to kill all your bills. The one thing that I had was I had experience, and I had age, and I had the ability to work across aisles and make sure a lot of my bills got passed, and very important ones. But if you don't go along to get along sometimes, you can have trouble up in Carson City because it's very partisan. And also the ruling party, the party that has as the majority, decides everything. So it's not a pleasant experience. What I do find pleasant is being in local government, because you are next to the people and you can make decisions without caucuses. I think that the way we're doing things in government doesn't benefit the people when you have federal government, a one-party rule or not. And it doesn't benefit the people. But local government is something that I came to love.
So that is a perfect transition into that. What year did you run for city council in Las Vegas, which I totally agree with you. When you hit the local politics as far as the city and county, I mean, that affects where certain businesses can go, where certain developments can go. Those affect, again, whether there's a Starbucks on your corner or not. So that is what I wanted to talk about, because obviously our podcast, or my podcast, is Commercial Real Estate Uncovered. So again, this is a topic that I just don't think people realize, that I really noticed when I ran for office, is how really unfamiliar people are with the local politics and how much it affects their life. And I'm going to say that at least 100 more times during this hour, because I want to hit this home.
Which you should.
So what year did you run for city council?
2019, I ran for the special election. I'm sure you've heard of Badlands, and I'm sure you've heard of Councilman Soroka, who was really the person who segued us right into that Badlands lawsuit that we just had. And he resigned in 2019. He was already being recalled for the whole Badlands debacle. But before that, due to something that was going on at City Hall that we're not going to get into, he resigned. And so although I was working with those who were trying to recall him as the person that wanted to run against him, once he resigned, it was free for all. Anybody could jump into the race. And so 8 other people jumped into the special election alongside me. And I ended up winning that race and getting 2 years of his elected term, which later turned into 3.5 because of AB 50, Assembly Bill 50, which gave us an extra 1.5 years because we went into the regular elections. So 2019, I know it was a long answer, but 2019 was when I got elected.
So being a Las Vegas city council person, what are some of the responsibilities of the day in and day out of the job that affect people's lives in your ward? You're Ward 2, correct?
I'm Ward 2. Well, the biggest one right now is Badlands. Right now, the Supreme Court upheld the judgment against the city for $48 million, which affects every single taxpayer in Las Vegas. So that's one. That's what elections have consequences. Even in the local government, to put a tax bill on the taxpayers that big is huge. So that's one. And 2 is we do the zoning, as you said, to decide what is compatible, harmonious and compatible in your neighborhoods. And code enforcement, we do a lot more than people realize. We don't do NRS statutes, which is the Nevada Revised Statutes, but we do ordinances. So I wish we did Nevada Revised Statutes because I'd make crime more accountable. Yeah. But I can only work on the local level, but I do work across the aisle with my counterparts in the state legislature to let them know what's going on every single day in the neighborhoods, because we're boots on the ground. They go to office 4 months, they go back to their regular jobs, and we get to hear everything from all the constituents.
So just to give context, our state assembly it's a 2-year term, which is the state elected official, and they're only up in Carson City, which is our capital, for 4 months out of their 2-year term, unless the governor calls a special session. And being a city councilwoman, that's a full-time job.
Well, they don't call it a full-time job. We get paid, but I do it full-time, and I cannot even imagine how somebody is doing what needs to be done for their ward if they're not working full time.
Well, I see you out and about all the time. I can vouch for what you said. You're very, very much boots on the ground. You're very involved with the community and know what's going on, which is important as far as, like you said, hearing the complaints or concerns that might be going on in your community. You probably hear more negative things than the positive things, but that comes with the territory.
Correct.
So being the Las Vegas City Council person, not only is it important, you hear things, you might not have exact rule over that, but you do have, people's ear as far as maybe it might be county commission or in the state. If it's different when the Las Vegas City Council picks up the phone and calls somebody, maybe then just somebody who might have moved, which is important because you've always been very accessible, at least in my experience.
Right.
That is something I love that you reiterated. So why do you want to run for Las Vegas mayor? I know Oscar Goodman, we had Mayor Oscar Goodman for a long time, and then Carolyn Goodman ran, and I believe she is termed out, and you've thrown your hat in the ring. Why do you want to be mayor of Las Vegas, which I think you would be fantastic at?
Thank you. I've spent 5 years there, and what we need is bold leadership. I don't believe we'd be in Badlands if we had bold leadership. We didn't. And I'd like to think that 2 city attorneys and 2 city managers took their retirement a little bit early because I'm not there to just have them make all the decisions. I'm very outspoken. I believe in transparency. I believe in getting things done. And we've kicked this down the road, Badlands, and many other things for decades. It took me 2 years to expose the Animal Foundation, which had been exposed by many news outlets and medias, but nothing was done. You know why? Because councilwomen and men come and go, and, it's just easier to just not rock the boat, because rocking the boat and taking on a leadership position is not easy. It's not easy to go against the establishment of what we have. But I've chosen that if I'm going to sit in this seat or any seat, it's going to be because I'm going to make a difference, or it's wasting my time because, as you know, I'm a realtor. I'm also a business broker, and I could be making a lot of money. Instead, I'm working as a councilwoman because I feel that when I change people's lives, I feel that that is what I'm supposed to do, and I love every minute of it. And when I can't do that anymore, then I don't need to be there.
That's a very, very good point. If you're not going to be all in, don't be all in at all. So how can somebody get, whether it's your campaign, and we'll at the end of this, we'll put ask you how to get in contact and that kind of stuff. But if somebody wanted to get into politics, wanted to get involved in a campaign as a volunteer, what are a couple ways that you would recommend that they do, whether it's a state assembly race or governor's race or even your race?
Well, I recommend that you go to my website and send me an email, first of all, because I'd love for you to get involved. There are so many things that people do in my campaign. We have people make phone calls. We have people deliver yard signs. We have people go out walking. There are so many things you can do. And then you are right there with the campaign, and you know exactly how campaigns are run. I have people that offer their homes for meet and greets in city limits. Tonight I have a fundraiser that has been offered to me. There are so many things that people can do, and it really gives you an inside idea of how campaigns are run. And so money, we need money. If somebody can just donate, that's being a part of the campaign.
And a lot of people think when you're donating to a campaign, it needs to be, big dollar amounts, but you'd be shocked what $25 will get you. And when I ran for office, I always put things in like a tangible thing, like $25 might get me a box of business cards or that. So the smallest dollar amount goes a long way. So if you have a local candidate that is important to you, I always say this too, get involved in any capacity. Give them $25. Maybe just put up a yard sign, just tell your neighbor about it. It's important, the local politics, to really get involved, even if it's the smallest capacity. It really goes a long way, because when you have a lot of people helping you, it's a big help. I always say I'd rather have, instead of a $2,000 check, I'd rather have everyone, 2,000 single dollar donations.
Exactly. Because they're invested in your campaign. And it just gives you, and again, if you volunteering gives you that prism into what's going on. And like you said, that $25 box of cards is so important, because I run out of them so much, and they're the most important thing when I go to an event is I bring those business cards. So you're right, $25 goes a long way.
So you mentioned that you're also a real estate agent and a business broker. It's an interesting perspective, just being an agent. Like, I do commercial real estate. I'm a commercial real estate broker, but I've always found this as an interesting similarity. You and I have had this conversation. Ground game takes, in real estate and as a candidate, one of the things you told me when I ran was door knocking. You have to go door knock, which I did thousands of doors, and I know you wear out the bottom of your shoes every cycle. How is it different running for mayor than it was city council?
It's a bigger area to cover, and that's where you really need your volunteers to come in, or paid walkers to come in, because you want to hit those households, but you're not going to hit them all. My husband started in October walking doors. He's hit 9,000 doors, and he is just, he's doing a lot more of that now in this type of race than I am, because there's so many other things I need to be doing. The bigger the area, the harder to walk. And that's where you need the money in, for your message to go out with mailers, with digital, with even TV, or streaming. So that's a little bit different race. Again, the bigger the area, the race becomes a little different and you need more money.
It's 100%. So you actually just came from a Brightline event, which is the train that's going to be connecting Las Vegas to Southern California. I am super excited about that project. I wish it was moving along a little bit faster, but if people have not heard of that, you're either living under a rock, but if you, or just don't pay attention to the news, but check out Brightline, just Google it and you'll find the information. I think that's a huge step forward in Las Vegas. But where do you see Las Vegas going? I mean, we have some professional sports teams that have moved here, the NBA, there's the A's are planning to move here. There's rumors of other professional sports teams. What's your vision for Las Vegas as far as growth or how do you see, where do you see us going in the next 1 to 10 years or whatever time frame?
Well, when I first launched my campaign of February of 2023, I said it's going to be the crown jewel of the West. I really think we're going to be the crown jewel of this nation. This city is on fire, not just with our sports teams, but people are looking to leave California. Well, they have been in droves, but I'm talking about major businesses now to come here. And so we are growing exponentially. And what I love, what the governor just did was really to let our congressional delegation and President Biden know how important it is to get our federal lands back. Over 80% of our land is owned by the federal government. And we're growing this fast. We need our land.
So that is something that most people aren't familiar. When you drive through Nevada, it's a big state. I mean, most people think it's just Las Vegas and Reno, but I've done a lot of road trips through Nevada on my motorcycle and in the car. And I mean, there's just massive tracts of land. And it would be great if we, had control about it. Can you tell us what the governor did to, in a quick summary of what he did to try to get control of part or all of them back?
Well, same thing that we've been doing at the city level is I think it was 2 years ago when we were in Washington, D.C., we went to see Congressman Mark Amodei. I went with the whole city delegation, our economic development, everybody, so we could talk about releasing pieces of land. But what the governor did was amazing because he said, you need to start releasing our land. I mean, in more all over the state. And like you said something really important. You drove through the state and people might think, oh, we're just rural. No, we're rural because it's not our land. Yeah. And that's an important thing to tell people. We don't own, I think it's like 85% of our land. We don't own it.
Yeah, it's the federal government controls a massive, the majority of it.
And they need to let it go, and they can do this. But the process to do it is ridiculous. Yeah. And that's what the governor's urging them, to change that process of releasing federal land to our state. Think about it for a second. We're using less than 20% of our land in the whole state of Nevada. It's unheard of in the rest of the country.
Our state has massive resources and could really do some incredible things. I could have a whole podcast with land brokers. So real estate brokers who only concentrate on land, who deal with the land auctions.
That's right.
You should hear them talk about the process of releasing land and how the auctions go. They could probably write some pretty good legislation on how to release it faster. That's a very interesting point.
And that's what we need to do, Eric. We need to do that.
I do not disagree with you at all on that one. That's a really good point. We just, as Las Vegas pushes out, even Apex, the industrial park that people have been working on for a very long time, it's finally now being developed. You see industrial buildings up there for distribution and some manufacturing. That's taken a very long time to get there, but you see what Nevada is capable of when land is not only released, but can be developed with utilities and actually be used, and you need water and power to do that.
That's correct.
So I do have, so you're bullish on Las Vegas. I'm super excited about living here. I think we're just going to keep growing.
We got to grow.
Yeah. And we have the possibility. I've seen it in my industry. Our economy has diversified. We used to just be gaming, and it's still the majority. And when I say gaming, the casinos and the hotels, we've got fantastic shows. But having the Raiders come here and the Las Vegas Golden Knights have been a massive success. It was really fun winning the Stanley Cup. But having the A's come and they're redeveloping the Tropicana. It's the movie studios that are coming.
That's so exciting. And Brightline, which I was just there today.
How have you, you might because you're on the city council, there might be some things that you know that you might not be able to share. But are there any industries that you've seen or companies that you've heard kind of rumors about maybe coming here? I know we've been the movie studios. Mark Wahlberg's been a big person pushing those. But have you? I would have never thought we were going to have music or movie studios here. It's a great example of how we're diversifying. Do you see any other industries coming to Las Vegas that you could mention? Or
well, we did have a group of our delegates in the city with LVCVA, and that group that brought a bunch of companies here during the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And, I wasn't happy about spending public money for it, but it got passed, and now they've been courting these different groups. And I think that you're going to see a lot more come in, even without courting them, because of what is happening in our neighboring cities in different states. So we have so many companies moving here, and I'm excited about bringing more and more and more. But we do have to keep business friendly.
Yeah. What are some things that you would like to see happen? Because the reason I ask this is I've been a real estate agent in Nevada, I guess since 2005. I'm also licensed in California, and a big part of my business has been an influx of people moving and companies moving from California to Las Vegas because of the business-friendly climate. What are some things that you would like to see happen to keep it that way?
Well, to keep it that way, we got to get our land, which we just talked about.
Got it.
That is really important. We need legislators who are not going to tax and regulate to death and become like California. They need to look over to their neighboring city. And crime is also something that's been out of control. And that's, again, with no accountability for crime. So what I will continue to say and have those meetings with my counterparts is we need to elect people that understand that all these people and businesses are moving from California because of the policies. Nothing else.
Yeah.
Nothing else. The weather's better there. The beaches are there. You have everything there. I know that because I came from there. What you don't have are people that have good policy sense. And I don't know if that's ever going to change. So now they're coming here, and we need to make sure that we continue to make good policy and not duplicate what our counterparts in California are doing. That is key to having all these people move here, because we are a business-friendly state, and we do have everything here, right here in Southern Nevada. We have everything, Eric. We have the best restaurants, best shopping. We have an airport that is an international airport. We have everything here, the best sports teams. So what we don't want is we don't want policies like our neighboring cities.
And that is the main, well, not the main reason, but a big reason I wanted to have you on is because I know that's a big part of your platform is the business-friendly climate, because that is directly connected to businesses that can move here and how they can operate, where commercial buildings can be built, but also doing it smartly as far as like buildings, not putting a big industrial building maybe in the middle of a school or something like that. It's obviously being dramatic.
Correct.
We need to be smart about it. But I do have a question for you about that. COVID was a crazy time in Las Vegas. We don't need to get into how it was handled, but it was really wild to see the Las Vegas Strip shut down, the downtown Las Vegas. I mean, just a ghost town. I rode my bike on the Strip. It was just crazy. During COVID, was there any, like, because you've been accessible, that kind of thing? I'm curious if there was something let me back up a little bit. I know you were fighting to try to open things up and do it smartly and safely. Was there anything during COVID that you saw that was like a big success or a shock? I mean, I'm just curious, being on the political side and having to deal with that kind of turmoil. I'm sure your phone was ringing to every capacity. If something stood out, maybe as far as a responsibility or maybe a win you had, or just a shock. This is a very broad question, but I was a private citizen at the time, and I couldn't imagine what you were. Well, I'm still a private citizen, but I'm curious if you saw something that was maybe something that should have been handled differently.
Yeah, the shock was that we picked and choose what we closed down. If you could go to Costco and Walmart or wherever, you could go to the mom and pop businesses too. This was shocking. This was horribly handled from the top to the bottom. We were the only entity open, City Hall. The state legislators got a big break because we got all their calls. And we were handling unemployment, trying to get people to their representative that could help them. We were working harder than we ever worked. And you tell me they closed down the schools, but yet our Smart Start programs were taking in the kids? What was the difference? Except that the city handled it. And I'm proud of what we did, but I'm ashamed that we picked and choose who stayed open. Costco, you can stay open because we need you, but mom and pop who sell the same things, you got to close. And to even think about in some states that people are arrested, that's the shocking part to me. I hope history does not repeat itself.
I totally agree with that. Well, I say one thing, having a fighter in office is important, and you are capable of that. I do have a question for you. You are very passionate about what you do. You work hard. I mean, just for me seeing you, how do you have work-life balance when you are campaigning for office? Your husband is out door knocking 9,000 doors, which is wild. So if you're a husband out there, if you get asked to take the trash out, don't complain. How do you manage? You're a mom. You're a wife. You're a city councilwoman. You're running for mayor. How do you balance all of this?
You bring them all into the campaign, and you show them the fight that we're doing and why we're doing it.
Okay.
And I just brought my daughter from France and put her on the campaign, and now she sees why I do what I do because being far away, she lives half the time in France and half the time here. It's like, you don't have time for me, Mom. You don't call me. Bring her in, show her what it is, and show her why we do it.
Okay. What's
at stake here with our city, with our country? Because I think it's important as mayor that to have a good mayor, it kind of is that ripple effect across the country. That when justice reform came and everybody decided it was the greatest thing in the world, it went across the whole country. I want to show people what good leadership looks like and that we can do it. And don't be afraid to stand up for what's right. And so, to me, that's the balance. When they come in and they see we're all fighting for the same thing, and doing some Pilates like 3 times a week really helps.
Now, one thing here, a lot of people, they jump into Democrat, Republican, Independent, but Las Vegas mayor is actually a nonpartisan position.
It's a nonpartisan position.
I probably should have started with that because people hear Republican, Democrat, and half of them get excited or half of them tune out. So the Las Vegas mayor position is actually just somebody who you agree with their terms, and you don't really need to pick party, which I think in some aspect in this job or the Las Vegas mayor job is really important. Do you think that's good or bad that that's a nonpartisan job?
I think it's good because most of the calls you get, every call you get, and it should be like this with every office. You don't ask what's your party when you help them, and we're helping them all day long, everybody. And I have support across the board. But what I will tell you is I don't want a mayor who believes that the liberal policies across this country are working, because we know they're not. So although it's nonpartisan, I hope that people will look at leadership as something that sees what's happening in our neighboring cities and knows it doesn't work.
It's always we have a big country, and it's really interesting when you look at different policies and business. I mean, different business policies and whether it's liberal or conservative, to see how they affect major cities. It's interesting. You're talking about Las Vegas and the diversity earlier. I went in Red Rock this weekend and went on a really long hike. And then on Sunday, I went on a motorcycle ride to Hoover Dam, and I bumped into an Australian gentleman who was riding his motorcycle. He's spending 5 months riding his motorcycle. And he was like, I can't believe how many national parks you guys have. It's wild what you have access to. But he actually flew into San Francisco, and his opinion about it was, to hear his experience was interesting there. Some great things, and then some things he was just shocked. He goes, I thought the media made it sound worse, but it just kind of is what it is at this point. But yeah, I like Las Vegas, and I'm excited to have leaders like you as our elected officials. So in your personal experience, I always like to ask this. You work very hard. You do a lot of ground game. Do you have any advice for maybe somebody new getting into real estate? Like, what would your first step be if you're going to be a brand new real estate agent today and you were not in politics? Do you have an idea?
I was a brand new agent.
Yeah.
So I think the important thing is what I always tell my daughter about anything, let's forget about real estate.
Okay.
So I tell her relationships are the most important thing in life.
Absolutely.
Relationships that you create in your life. You don't know how important they are later. And I do it because I love people, and I think it's important. I mean, I've been in business my whole life. It's important to have relationships with everyone. And it's so interesting to watch my campaign and all those relationships that I created. And I know people, and they help in so many ways, as I have helped them in their, whatever their business was or their charity was. And so I'm going to just say this. Everything you do, whether it be real estate or anything, your relationships that you created and the experience that you have is where you need to be.
There's a phrase that, it's not mine, but it's one I love to use. Your network is your net worth.
That's right.
And the whole idea about these networking events, and that is more people you meet that you can learn from. The been there, done that crowd is super important, and the doors they open up. And it's important to go into those things, not trying to get something out of them. But I mean, I think that speaks volumes for you, because you've campaigned in multiple cycles now. You've ran for different offices, and the same people show up to help you.
That's right.
And
That's right.
And it's exhausting to ask for money and ask for their time. I've door knocked myself. And
It's exhausting.
It is exhausting, especially when it gets hot. The summers in Las Vegas, the summers in Las Vegas can be tough, but that's one of the things this Australian gentleman said. He's like, Australia gets really hot, but we live by the coast. He goes, you guys are just in the middle of the desert.
Middle of the desert.
It's a great city, though. It's fine. It's only like 2 months out of the year. It just means wake up early and you'll be fine.
Yeah. And the other thing I want to say is sometimes you're invited somewhere and you're like, oh, I'm kind of tired. Should I go or should I go? And I'll go somewhere and I'll tell my team, why did I make this appointment? I'll go and I'll meet some incredible person who is an amazing friend throughout my life. So yes, going places, meeting people, really important.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's in real estate. It's the same thing. It's interesting. Some of my oldest clients have become some of my closest friends, and the advice they give you, and they just kind of run with you through the good and the bad part. So that relationship thing is it's a theme that keeps popping up during this podcast. So having a politician say that who has to campaign, I cannot reiterate that enough. Appreciate and don't let those relationships be taken for granted.
No.
So a question I like to ask everybody is, how do you stay up to date in what's going on in the world, maybe Las Vegas? Again, you're on the private sector and you're a city councilwoman, so you get information from a million different places. But where do you go to stay up to date what's going on in Clark County here in Las Vegas?
Well, even though not all the news is correct all the time, I do read my review journal every morning.
The Las Vegas
every
Review
morning
Journal.
when I wake up. I go through the review journal really quickly, see what I want to read. But also, because I'm everywhere and doing everything, I get notified about different things. And I probably get notified about things that the actual public doesn't get notified right away about.
Sure.
As being a council member, we get briefed from our, public information guy who will send us emails and different things.
Is that a police officer who does
No,
that?
it's our public communications person.
Okay.
That will, and the captains. I'm really close to most of the captains of all the command centers. We often have lunch, so they'll notify me if something's happening in my ward specific. The communications person at Las Vegas will notify us of any international or city things. But I just get up every morning, and before I'm out of bed, I just read my review journal. And
readers are leaders. That's one thing that I just can't. No, our leadership team, I sent them a book over the weekend. It's just true. I mean, you get countless information from books or from the news source. Okay, so the Las Vegas Review Journal is one I get to. What about a favorite book that you might read over again, or one that you read recently that you would recommend somebody read?
I haven't read a book recently. I get a lot of people sending me books, but they got to wait until after this campaign. Because by the time I lay my head down, I'm asleep, and sometimes I leave at 10 in the morning. I'm not home till 10 at night. So reading right this second, other than my review journal, is out of the question. But there is a book that I read as a kid, and it's still my favorite book, and that is To Kill a Mockingbird.
To Kill a Mockingbird.
That is my absolute number one favorite. And it's so funny because I don't remember every detail of it because I haven't read it in a long time, but it's still one of my favorite books.
That's a classic. I even if it's not mandatory reading, people should read it.
They should.
I did kind of jump over this segment. I did want to cover real quick the Las Vegas City Council. How many council members are there?
We have 6 wards and the mayor, so there will be 7 altogether.
Total. And they and that is a 4-year term or a 2-year term?
It's a 4-year term.
4-year term. Okay. So yeah, it's always just keeping up with how long the terms are and the different elected officials is a lot. But I love that. So it's interesting, the campaigning and being a real estate agent. There's so many connections. You're literally door knocking. You're getting your message out without being salesy.
Marketing.
Marketing and being informative. I mean, you can't just go out and ask for a vote. You need to tell people why they should vote for you, which is a great deal. Well, how can people get in touch with you? Either the campaign or the city of Las Vegas. Do you have a website or are you on social media?
I do. And can I tell you what my latest announcement was?
I would love to hear it.
So all the state's police, LVPPA on down, they all endorsed me.
Wow, that's a big deal.
And I'm so proud of that endorsement because public safety is my number one issue. And I work shoulder to shoulder with Metro to make sure that they have the tools they need to keep us safe and themselves safe. So I'm really excited about that. That is an important endorsement for me, and I just got it. So
well, law enforcement. Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but the law enforcement's a big deal because we, I feel safe in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
I think the police,
they're fabulous.
Yeah, I think they do a good job. I haven't personally had any issues, and I see police on a lot of corners, so I think that is a big deal. So congratulations on that endorsement.
Thank you.
So yes. How to get a hold of you?
Oh, I was going to also say this about our Metro. Our homicide department has about a 98% solvability rate.
Oh.
Nowhere in the country do we have that.
So this goes right back to real estate or moving your companies here. You see things going on in the country, and when you have a police department that way. So if you think response time and effectability, that's something that people look at. But this is related to what you're talking about. You'd be surprised when I get a business owner or somebody who runs a company and they're thinking of moving a business here, or maybe they're already here and they're expanding. They know what's going on in this city, whether they live here or not. They know crime rates. They know where the schools are. They know what the taxes are, because if they're going to expand here or invest money here, they know what's going on. So that's why it's so important for locals to know this thing. People making decisions and hiring people. That's one of the things. Again, you might be here already and you're expanding your business. It means you're hiring people, maybe buying a bigger building. You're employing people, which directly affects the community. And that might be a job you might get. So being informed about your elected officials is massive, and it's something I'm going to.
And the data is accessible.
It is
like
accessible.
You said, yes.
That's a great endorsement, and I could talk about that part of that. I get calls from people in Northern California about potentially moving their companies here on a regular basis. But a lot of people think it's just people moving, but it's expanding here too, which is a big deal. Maybe people have kids at home and they don't want to move them till they're out of school or whatever.
Right.
But people who run and own these companies are very well educated, and those are the people hiring people and training people. A lot of these manufacturing jobs, they actually do on-site training, which is a huge deal if somebody doesn't want to go to college.
That's right.
But to back up a little bit, so how can people get a hold of you? What's the best way?
So the best way is victoriaseaman.com. Just my name, victoriaseaman.com. I'm on all the platforms of social media. I'm on Instagram, TikTok. Took me a while to get on TikTok. Twitter, LinkedIn, what else? Facebook, and even Threads. But they can send me an email at victoriaseaman.com. Okay. And I prefer they do that over this social media messages, because I don't get to them that often. But if you have something really important you need to talk to me about that concerns Ward 2, they can always call me on my office line, 702-229-2420. You can always call me on my cell phone, 702-466-0407.
Well, just to summarize the podcast, I really appreciate you coming on. I mean, we covered your campaign, some of the state and local politics, being excited about this city and county, the public lands. A lot of people aren't familiar with that. Is there anything else you'd like to mention before we wrap up here?
I would just like to say I'd love to see you as an elected official one day, Eric, because you are amazing.
I really appreciate that. The time might come around again that I run for office again. That was quite the experience. You were actually one of the ones who told me this, that you have to door knock. And I was like, how often do I have to door knock? And I'd do my day job till about 1 o'clock. And then I'd take my dog when it wasn't too hot and just go.
And what did I tell you?
You were right.
Every day.
Every day. As long as the sun was still up, because otherwise people thought you might be a little strange. But the favorite part of the ground game with campaigning and real estate too is meeting the people face to face. And you probably have some crazy stories, but like I made some incredible friends. And you'd ring the doorbell and say you're a candidate, and they'd want to invite you in for a barbecue or give you bottles of water.
That's true.
I mean, they were like, it was shocking. And even if they weren't your party, some people weren't so nice. I mean, I got a couple doors slammed in my face and called some unpleasant names.
Yeah, I got some threats.
But that's okay. So I really appreciate you coming on. Keep the campaign fight going. I've always been a supporter of you, and
thank you.
I'm looking forward to see how this election comes in November. It's going to be a wild ride, especially with the us being a battleground state.
Well, I also want to tell people, get out and vote in June, because that's so important. I know you said November, but in these races of nonpartisan, Eric, the person who gets 50% plus one wins it outright.
Now, you're 100%. Is your election in June, or is that one in November?
So
I know the primary's in June.
Primary's in June. So we have a primary in June because it's nonpartisan. The top two go to November, no matter what party. But if one candidate gets 50% plus one in June, they don't have to go to November. And I did that in my reelection last year.
For city council.
For city council in 2022, actually, it wasn't last year. I won with 55% of the vote. So I urge people, don't wait till November. First of all, you want to get the right person that you like as your candidate in June. And so many people do not go out in June, Eric. We have to urge them.
I'm aware. So just to we'll finish up here in a second, but just to kind of give clarity, we're a primary state. So in June, if it's a party election, there might be 4 or 5 Republicans running to be the nominee for like state assembly, and 4 or 5 or a dozen Democrats running.
Correct.
In June, we have a primary to elect your party's nominee, and then they campaign to be the elected official in November. So June 9th, or I'm sorry, it's
June 11th
this year.
And in all the nonpartisan races like mine, plus the judges, which are crucial, you have to get out and vote, because the person who gets 50% plus one automatically takes it.
We could have a whole podcast on elections.
Let's do that.
And June is huge, because you're right. The nonpartisan people get elected, and judges. I mean, think about that. The importance of the judges in our community, and most people, again, don't pay attention to that. And they are a very important role, our elected judges. So get informed. If you have, if you're going to vote, which I encourage you to, get out, Google the candidates. Get out and vote, which is the important part in the primary. And Victoria, I want to say Councilwoman Victoria Seaman, thank you so much for being on this, and I'm looking forward to seeing the results of your mayor race. Thank you again for being on.
Thank you so much.